I don't believe at all that people should be defined by their work, and that we will be in a better world and more well healthy world if we untangle the relationship between our self-worth and our output of work and how much we make. Hi, welcome back to another episode of the Everyday Talent Podcast. This is the go-to podcast for creatives looking for the freshest insights on creative career and business. I'm your host, Betty. I'm a coach for creatives and a creative myself. And today we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, and potentially one of those controversial topics that people always think about but don't want to talk about: money. And specifically today, I'm excited to finally tackle the topic of starving artists right on, starving artist mindset specifically, because I think this is a phrase that people have been throwing around for a long time, and it's not familiar, not, well, double negative there. It is not that unfamiliar to anybody in the creative sector. I feel like everybody have used it in the past few years. Certainly, as a coach, when I'm talking about the topic about money for creators, there have been lots of people who use this phrase casually, and as someone who is critical around the language that we use, I'm always thinking, like, what do we exactly mean by that? I feel like different people probably have different definitions. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about my take on solving artist mindset, but there's more. I want to offer specifically three ironies or three phenomenon or cycle that I observe when creatives who have solving artist mindset fall trap for. And by sharing that specific phenomenons with you, I want to basically encourage us to be aware and acknowledge that this mindset trap existence and discuss ways to move beyond that. And of course, knowing me, I won't leave you hanging. I'm not just going to give you an episode about solving artist mindset and not give you some resource. So after listening to this episode, I really encourage you to check out my new resource, new free resource. I actually, as I was putting it together, I can't even believe that I'm making it free, but here I am, because I feel like this year has been especially difficult for a lot of creatives. So I want to make a resource about increasing your weight free. And it's a 10-day challenging guide that outlines step by step how to increase your creative service rate. It's specifically designed for self-employed creatives, but I think it also have implication and resonance with people who might be looking at their full-time job salary, or whether you're doing contract work on the side as you have a full-time job. So definitely check out this resource. It's titled Worth More. And also, on top of that, I'm offering a free workshop in partnership with Coach Adam Flores and his team, who's offering monthly a collection of free workshops for business owners, small business owners who are looking for a smart way to grow. So I will put that workshop link in the show notes, as well as the Worth More resource. But before that, we are here to talk about solving artist mindset and all of the nuance and complexity. I want to just like take a pause and ask the audience, you who are listening right now, how would you define what is the starving artist mindset? Take a second and think about that. I think for me, when it comes to starving artist mindset, it has these implications that of an individual belief as well as a collective phenomenon. Individually, I've seen in my own work coaching clients who work in the creative sector that we somehow hold this belief that we are not worthy enough. We are not supposed to be charging more if we are working in the creative sector, especially because what we do is art, right? Art should not be selling out. Collectively, I see this as a perpetuated culture in the creative sector. In as my work as a fundraising consultant, I see that on the funding side as well, and at the organizational level, when organizations also don't think that artists should be paid more, or organizations think that in the art sector think that they should be grateful working with so little because it's art. They are not like making science or something. And so it is really both an individual belief and an entrenched culture revolving around the creative sector and perpetuating the creative sector. However, what I think is lacking in the landscape of talking about solving artist mindset is talking about, okay, once we have solving artist mindset, what happens? What's the actual impact? This is why I want to point to you three specific impact or ironic cycle that I observe after thousands of hours working with creatives as a coach, as a consultant, and in my own practice, observing myself as a creative business owner. Okay, so observation number one, irony number one. This happened recently with a conversation I had with a coaching client, which is the more that we get fixated on money or wanting to make more money, the more that we feel that money becomes the only measure for success. Let me unpack that. So oftentimes what happens when I see creatives talking about their creative service or thinking about increasing their rate is that they think about money as something that only when they urgently need it, they're going to hustle for it. Because most of the time, they don't want to think about money. Money is kind of gross or yucky to think about. But when we chronically don't think about money, what happens is that we are not kind of minding our budget, or we have not calculated our needs and wants, and we get into money problems. And when we get into money problems, we fall for the cycle of like, now I need to hustle for money. The next project I take, it will be about money. And what happens when we fall for that perfectly dangerous zone is that our zone of focus just becomes one thing and one thing only, which is about money. And this kind of she gave me permission to share this story, is that what she conveyed to me was that she feels gross when she's in that zone. And I understand that, because we are not just because we are creative, we are humans. We have different metrics of success. And in fact, I often encourage in a healthy business or healthy creative practice, we don't use money as the only measure of success. But the cycle that I described to you is that the more that we get fixated on money, sometimes by force, sometimes by cumulative habit of not wanting to talk about money, the more that money becomes the only thing that we look at. And that's incredibly unhealthy. And when you find yourself in this spot, and often in desperation to say, the next thing I do must be about money, my encouragement to you is that recognize that this is not one day problem. You arrive there, and this is a little bit of tough love, probably because of entrenched or like cumulative time have passed that money hasn't been on on your mind, or you haven't made it a priority, and now money suddenly is the priority and you need to do something about it, and it sucks. I see you. It's not a good spot to be in, and it's okay that the next thing or next few things that you do is purely about money, but also give yourself the compassion that it is okay to do that sometimes, and the recognition that once you get out of that desperate situation, be mindful of how to make sustainable change around your relationship with money. That would be my tips and encouragement for you. Okay, so that's the first observation and irony that I observe, is that the more that we care about money, the more that it becomes the only thing we care, the more that we feel like we're selling out. Boom. Second thing is all of the number one, number two, number three, they're all interrelated. Spoiler alert. The second thing, this happens when we want to increase our rates or increase our salary. The more that we feel the chronic pain of being underpaid, the more likely you're going to arbitrarily raise your rates or salary. Let me explain. again, it's a little bit of complex vicious cycle that I'm trying to paint to you here. Maybe let me give you a metaphor. The chronic pain of being underpaid is kind of like having a chronic back pain. If we feel chronic back pain, it exists with us. For both of you who have chronic health issue, we know like that you find ways to cope with it, but it often is there, and sometimes it gets worse, and sometimes it's better. And what happens is that you really want to get rid of that pain, and you give a try for anything. And so it's a similar phenomenon that I observe when it comes to money. The more that we feel that we are chronically being underpaid and not do anything about it, the moment that we want to do something about it, we do anything about it, which is we just pinpoint a rate to say, I must be paid that. I've heard this many, many times. And again, actually usually in situation where clients or prospective clients come to me when they have been laid off or they exited a job that they really feel that they were undervalued or underpaid, and they pull out of this number from the top of their head and say the next job must be this amount, or the next project I take, it won't be like I won't take it unless it's this amount. And often I find that the number that they pinpoint at that point is a product of a mix of pain, grief, and emotion. And it is not based on any kinds of critical analysis on the market that they exist, their service exists, or comparative rate. It is often just unhealthy comparison and be like, my friend so and so at somewhere is paid this, so I must be paid that. So I would really caution against of that habit or behavior. And what we say there is, once again, aware and acknowledge the difficult emotion that you have around money. Know that it's like a chronic back pain. You have been experiencing this pain, and it is not a scratch that can be quickly put a bandage on. It does not just require a quick solution. And if you were to increase your rate now, you were going to command a higher salary. It must be done with intention. Don't you agree? Let's look at the root cause for your money mindset. Let's look at the root cause why you are chronically underpaid, why you suffer from that chronic back pain, rather than putting a band-aid or a little hot pad on it and call it a day. Because if you're not careful and you just arbitrarily pinpoint new weight, the chances are, if that weight is not based on any kind of comparative market or market research, there is a high chance that your new weight or new salary demand gets rejected if it's not being thought through strategically. And the moment that the rejection happens, will reinforce the belief in you that maybe you're not worth that higher rate. And it will create even a larger amount of pain, more acute pain, and more chronic pain for you to feel around money. So again, I hope that you see the vicious cycle. I wish that I can draw a diagram on this podcast, that the vicious cycle I'm painting. The more that you arbitrarily set your rate increase, the more that you are likely to fall for the trap of feeling unworthy. And this is an exact problem I want to address in that free resource that I'm publishing and sharing with you today called Worth More. There's steps there that are designed to call off that painful self, that urgently want to change kind of self. I understand that need to say, take a step back, do some research, and be intentional about your rate change before you actually do that, implement or increase your rates or command a higher salary. Then the last observation I will offer that is an irony that contributes to the vicious cycle of our money problem is tying our rate to our self-worth. Again, all three observations are interrelated, right? So for this observation, what I want to pinpoint is I've seen is that the more entrenched you are in a bad relationship with your money story and your money mindset, the more that it becomes less about money and more than about your self-worth. And those two things initially are very different. I just want to make a like, I'm not one person to make like a black and white statement, but let me just say it in a very black and white tone here. Your self-worth is not tied to how much money you make. It's worth repeating. Your self-worth is not tied to how much money you make. You are a holistic person. If you're listening to this and you feel that you're not worthwhile just because of like your current salary, I want to speak directly to you and say that that is completely not true. You're a holistic being, you're deserving of love, and deserving of support. And right now, what you're feeling in terms of your relationship with money and how much you're potentially making is in itself more of a career, work, or strategic problem that we can help you fix. It is not a reflection of your self-worth. And I don't believe at all that people should be defined by their work, and that we'll be in a better world and more well healthy world if we can untangle the relationship between our self-worth and our output of work and how much we make. So let me just put that out there as a premise. And once we establish that premise, let's look at the problem that's been happening, though, is that we often do tie our work to our self-worth. We do tie of how much we make to our self-worth. And the more that we feel that chronic back pain with money, the more that this is happening. And it really pains me to see that with like my creative friends, or just talking to potential and current clients. And what we need to address here is that we need to acknowledge, even if we don't believe it yet, those two things are separate. We always worth more. We always are worthy. And that the money problem, even though it feels entrenched, and sometimes we can't even find a root cause, such as a back pain, there are ways to go about it. And changes around money mindset, if we were to address the solving artist mindset that we might currently experience, comes with a combination of taking action, seeing results so that we get validation that what we're doing is working, and mindset shift. And those things come work together in a mysterious cycles. Like they work together, kind of like a boiling chicken soup. Let's just call, or any soup. They are the ingredients: action, resort, mindset shift. Like you add these ingredients in the pot and you come up with like something magically delicious. But we can't really pinpoint, I would be lying to you to pinpoint how much one needs to be more than other, but they always work in combination. So please don't tie how much you make to your self-worth. And even if you don't believe it yet, just be open to the possibility that those two things are not interconnected or not correlated at all. So this is why I am passionate about helping you and creatives in general to address money problem. It is so much more than about how much we currently make, or at least we unfortunately have made it so much more than about how much we currently make. And so having done it again and again in my own practice, increasing my rates, and I still think about the first time when I became just self-employed and I did it for the first time, how empowered I feel afterward. What happens is that if we are able to practice the skill or learn the skill about increasing our weight, we turn that into a skill that we don't forget and becomes a muscle and ability that we develop as creative business owner or self-employed creators. So in the guide that I'm giving you for free, the 10-day challenging guide, what you will get is a step-by-step breakdown of how to approach weight increase. You also get accountability support from me through emails through the 10 days. And within the accountability support, I will give you modified exercise. Think of this as like when you watch those exercise video that has like a difficult level, a medium level, and easy level, because I want to meet you where you are. You might be looking for a big challenge and stretch for yourself, or you might be looking for a more gentle challenge. So The guide and accountability support also include that, and some bonus exercise for you to consider beyond the 10-day. So download the free guide now at sharebetty.com/worthmore. I include the link in the show notes. And if you're interested in also attending a workshop that elaborate on those 5 steps, I've partnered with Coach Adam Flores and his team to publish a workshop that is specifically on the topic of how and why you should gain confidence in increasing your weight. And I will also include that in the show notes for you to sign up and attend. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I feel like we just touched the iceberg of a very important problem and a very entrenched problem in the creative sector. If today's episode created resonance with you, I hope that you reach out. And if you use the resource and have any feedback, please reach out as well. I very much embody a design thinking philosophy in any of my service and product design. I'm constantly looking for feedback to improve my offering for creators, because I'm one of you. I am a working creative as well, and I want to understand your pain points, how the landscape are changing, what's your thoughts after you use the exercise. And so please reach out to me. And if you're new here on the Everyday Talent Podcast, please stay tuned for more resource and insights on creative career and your path. Sign up or subscribe to the podcast on whichever podcast platform that you're listening to this podcast. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, you name it, we're on it. And may we all create a thriving creative practice that allow us to make happier art and happier money. I will see you on the next episode.